song came out. Excuse me, I'm here. As Michelle and the band were playing that song, John Alquist whispered to me that when his dad heard that on the radio coming home from work one afternoon, the next day, he spent all day, his dad did, with John. That song turned a lot of dads and children around, and it's probably a song that we need to replay over and over again because life goes so fast. One day, we're rolling around on the floor with our two boys. That was back in, where did we live there? On Lois Street, didn't we? Yeah. And the next day, we're playing pool as adults. The scripture reminds us how quickly life goes, a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. The Hebrew scripture says, people are like a breath. Their lives are like passing shadows. And then Islamic Sufism, which is basically the mystical side of Islam, says time flows like water, and before you know it, the cup is empty. Yeah. Or if your parents, the nest is empty. Refrigerator is empty. Life goes so fast. There are all kinds of perspectives on the empty nest. There's this perspective, now what am I supposed to do when the little bird has flown the nest? There's this perspective, got to kick that bird out of the nest. And then there's this perspective, empty nesters, we are probably naked. We looked forward to that time in our lives, Denise and I did, when our nest was empty. So today in our series, Families Am I Right, we're talking about this. Parenting adult children, which for our purposes today is kind of an oxymoron. It's right up there with growing smaller. How can you grow smaller? Well, how can you parent adults? And how can a child be an adult? Yeah, Denise and I had children, but they're not children anymore. They're 39 and they're 37. They are adults, and to call them adult children gives us, I think, far too much permission to revert back, to regress to a time when our boys really were children and they really were mine, ours, and to behave accordingly. I mean, when was the last time your 37-year-old responded well to, because I said so? So since they are adults, should we really be parenting them? Maybe not. But we often do. So we have to ask ourselves the question, are we caring for our adult kids or are we enabling dependency? This video of a mom has a sarcastic look at that very challenge that we have as parents. Take a look.
Hi, sweetie, it's Mom. I left you 17 messages. It's getting to the point where I'm going to only love you to the space station and back. Look, I have been tracking a vicious weather system off the coast of Madagascar, and I know that that is nowhere near where you live, but if my calculations are correct, on Sunday you will be feeling the after effects of this storm. It will be literally outside your apartment door. I know you like to go on a little road trip on Sunday to the grocery store, and I'm asking you not to. Call me back. I love you to the moon and back. I was just kidding about that space station thing.
Isn't it typical, or isn't it okay for moms of adult kids to track weather system for their kids? Devin, it might rain in Seattle Tuesday. Do you have an umbrella? Do you want me to Amazon Prime you one? I found one with dinosaurs. I know you're 37, but I know you like dinosaurs. Many parents are enabling their kids. Maybe parents are enabling their 22-year-old when they call to make a dentist appointment for their 22-year-old, or when the parent calls their college-age kid to wake up so they won't miss a test. Here's some real-life examples of maybe overdoing it. My ex-sister-in-law moved from Texas to Virginia to follow her daughter to college. She and her husband pulled up roots, gave up their home, and moved into an extended stay motel while their daughter lived on campus. As a university instructor, I once got a call at 1 a.m. at home from the parent of a college senior who wanted to complain about a grade I had given her 22-year-old daughter on an assignment. I asked her if her daughter was in the hospital or dead, because surely that would be the only reason for her call to me. In the Christian New Testament, Paul writes a letter to the folks in Galatia, and he says this: when we were children, we were under guardians and trustees. Now, Paul is going to take this metaphor of a parent and a child relationship and apply it spiritually. And I want to get to that in a minute. But the principle about parenting is, to me, very clear, and let me talk with you about that. And I think what Paul is saying about the parent-child relationship is when you have a human being who is a child, then that human being as a child needs a guardian, needs someone to watch over them. But when that human being is no longer a child, the human being is now an adult, the need for a guardian is over. Otherwise, you end up with a 30-year-old who still doesn't know how to operate a washing machine. Well, then Paul does apply this parenting principle to human spirituality. He says this in chapter 3, so the law, those 10 commandments and the other things in Moses' law, was our guardian until Christ came that we might be justified by faith. Now that this faith has come, we're no longer under the guardian. So when you're a spiritually young person, when you're spiritually immature, maybe you need some rules. Maybe you need somebody to guard you, to tell you what is right or what is wrong or what the best thing is. But as you spiritually mature, you no longer need to live by the rules. And your life is no longer rule-based. Your life is now love-based. You don't need the guardian anymore. You don't need the law anymore. You don't need the 10 Commandments anymore. That's what Paul, in most of his letters in the Christian New Testament, just beats us over the head with, but we still just don't get that. So, Paul says we put away childish things. He told the Corinthians that. And one of the childish things that we put away is this need for a guardian. So our adult children, if you want to call them that, don't need us as a guardian anymore. They're adults. They don't need us telling them what to do and checking up on them all the time. Spiritually, you don't need the law anymore. Paul writes like this in Galatians 5:13. For y'all were called to freedom, only do not let your freedom, because that's what people say. Well, if you don't have the law, if you don't have rules, people just go crazy, lawless. So he said, you're called to freedom, but don't use or don't let your freedom become an opportunity for your selfishness, for your false self to express itself. But through love, serve and seek the best for one another. So that's our guard. Love becomes our guard. So Paul uses that relationship of a parent and a child as a metaphor for our relationship with rules versus love. So the point for us this morning is that when it comes to parenting, there is an end to that runway where the parent says, I'm not going to guard your life anymore. If you fall into a pile of mud, I'll empathize with you, but I'm not going to pay for you. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. You remember the story in the Hebrew scripture of Adam, humanity, and Eve, the mother of all living. A beautiful mythical story about their attempt to understand how this whole thing began. But in that story of Adam and Eve, you see these words, leave and cleave. Do y'all remember to what that's referring? So then the story, God said to mankind, you are to leave your mother and your father. and you are to cleave to your partner. It seems like parenting is a relationship that has an end. That there comes a time when the adult children leave their adults, their parents, and they cleave to a partner. We have a hard time with that leaving and allowing them to cleave. We see that this leaving and cleaving, this parent-child challenge in the life of Jesus and his mom, Mary. It's an event recorded in John chapter 2, and I'm going to read the very beginning of it out of my dad's Bible. He bought this in December 14, 1966. And it starts in John chapter 2 in verses 1 through 3. And the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus was called and his disciples to the wedding. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." It's like Mary said, "There's no wine, Jesus. What am I supposed to do without wine?" And Jesus is like, "Mom, don't." So here's Jesus and Mary. The first recorded case of, "Mom, you're embarrassing me." Now, Mary doesn't say, "They have no wine. Is there anything you can do?" She just says, "They have no wine." And then I'm thinking she did this. It doesn't say it, but I'm thinking it really happened. They have no wine, and she just stood there and stared at him. She gave him the look. A large part of being a mom is staring at your kids like this until they start acting better. And then Mary does what any good mom will do. She completely ignores Jesus' objection to it and tells the servants of the wedding, "Okay, whatever he says to you, do it." I can just imagine Jesus' friends, his disciples, looking at Jesus and really getting a good laugh out of it. Yeah. Still doing what your mom tells you to do, huh? So I bet you've got a "what would mom do" bracelet. What we see here is a child Jesus growing into an adult Jesus. And how will the mother and the son navigate that? Jesus tried to push back a little bit. "Woman, why are you involving me? My hour has not yet come." How would your mother respond if you called her woman? Jesus, that's a bold move. It seems as if Jesus is treating his mother not as his mother, but he's treating his mother just as any other woman. So I wonder what Jesus was really doing here. I wonder if Jesus was trying to cut the umbilical cord, if he's trying to break away to assert his own independence. I wonder if Jesus is trying to establish a brand new relationship dynamic with his mom. That he was now no longer just her son, but he was a rabbi. He was a prophet. And in some people's minds, he was the Messiah. Now, the story has a kind of an interesting contradiction. Jesus seemingly refuses his mom's, Mary's, request, but then he just turns around and does the miracle anyway. It's like, "I'm not going to do it," and then he ends up doing it. So I think Jesus was battling this. At what point do I break away from mom? Well, maybe he realized, well, they really do need some wine. And I don't know what the verse means when Jesus said, "My hour has not come." I've studied that for 40 years. Nobody has a good explanation for it. And I have no idea what Jesus meant by that. But I do think this. I think that this whole story suggests that he is trying to establish a new relationship dynamic. And he was trying to do that in a way to assert his own independence while at the same time respecting his mom. So here's some takeaways. For parents of adult children, let's do this. Let's recognize the transition in the relationship. Mary had to adjust from Jesus as my boy to Jesus as a rabbi, Jesus as a prophet. So we need to recognize that our kids are not our children, they are adults. Your daughter may still be your princess, but she's also a boss. She's also possibly a partner, a mortgage holder. We need to recognize the transition. A second thing we can do is to express, as parents, our needs or the need of a situation without controlling our child, our kid, our adult. Mary simply stated the problem without trying to micromanage it. She didn't say, Jesus, turn the water into a nice cab and make sure it's aged properly. She just presented the need and went on about her business. Third thing we need to do is to let go gracefully. Jesus did initially push back. And when he did push back on her, she let it go. She didn't get defensive. She didn't say, after all I've done for you. There's a lot of letting go in the transition between a child and an adult child. We've got to let go of our worry. We're worried that something will happen to our kid, and it will, because that's life. They will make mistakes, like that haircut in 2005 that we still don't talk about with Devin. Next time you see him, ask him about it, though. We have to let go of giving advice that they didn't ask for. Instead of interfering with our advice, we need to sit back and wait for the invitation to give advice. Nobody wants to hear, well, in my day, for the 500th time. We need to let go of guilt tripping. Deborah Reber, the best-selling author and speaker and pioneering advocate for neurodivergent children and their families, said this: letting go does not mean you stop caring. It just means you stop trying to control the outcome or even to control the person. It also means that you stop saying things like, it's okay that you didn't call me on your birthday. I was just in labor with you for 36 hours. So for adult children need to do this, establish some healthy boundaries. Jesus tried to do that. I think he made it clear to Mary that his priorities and his role and his identity were shifting. Mary, this is not our relationship now. We're not in a position where you guide me, where you tell me what I need to do. I'm 30 years old, Mom. I mean, I'm the Son of God. Get off my back. He didn't say that. But it's okay for an adult child to say, Mom, I can't come over right now and fix your printer. I'm in surgery. Or whatever it might be. The second thing we need to do is to balance respect for parents with our own autonomy. Jesus did honor his mom, and it was kind of messy. But he still made his own decision, with a little bit of influence from Mom, obviously. We saw Jesus communicate very honestly with Mary. He did not pretend to agree with her concern. When he had reservations, he just expressed it. We need to allow our adult children a safe place to be honest in their communication if they don't agree with us, or if we cross the line. They need to be able to have the freedom and the safety to say, yeah, Dad, you crossed the line on that. I'm a grown-up guy. We also need to, however, recognize our parents' wisdom. I think Jesus was establishing his independence, but maybe he saw, well, Mom, you got a point. You've got a point. What's it going to hurt for me to turn some water into wine? Adult children need to be independent, but adult children also need to recognize, yeah, Mom and Dad might have some wisdom. The adults in my life, the caregivers, the guardians in my life have some wisdom. I mean, after all, my parents survived without iPhones, Google, and Uber Eats. They got through life just fine without all that. Maybe they do have some wisdom. So the relationship between parents and adult children is one of the most challenging and rewarding transitions that we will ever experience. It's a journey from protection to partnership, from guidance just to being a friend. Denise and I are loving. We were so happy when they left home, but we loved them when they were home. But we loved it when they were away from home. And this is not in my notes, but if we're going to get to the point where we are happy that they're gone, man, you've got to build a good relationship with the partner. And I just encourage you, and I want to help you do that in life. But our relationship with our guys now is just very refreshing. And it is so much of an equal partnership. And 39 and 37, they are teaching us things all the time. And the role is beautifully reversed in so many different categories of our life right now. So it's a journey. Protection to partnership, from guidance to friendship, them being the guide now at times, and us being the learners. Now, speaking of preparing your kids for adulthood, I want to talk about student venues for a moment. They're doing amazing work helping our kids grow into adults, to develop the spirituality, the confidence, the character that they're going to need when they no longer have the adults in their life, their guardians or their parents, whoever that might be, who is taking care of them, when they're no longer around to tell them that they need to wear clean underwear in case they have an accident. So if you have teenagers at home, I encourage you to connect them to our student venues. And if you're looking for a place to serve, we are always needing mentors who kind of understand that delicate balance between guidance and independence and freedom. If you want to contact our folks, this is Leslie. She is our director of our student venues, and I would love for you and Leslie to have a conversation. What Leslie is doing is truly kingdom work, and we're here to help you in that transition from your kids to adults. So the miracle at Cana was not just about turning water into wine, although it's a pretty cool trick at a dinner party. It's about a transition. It's about a mom who is learning to let go and trust the adult that she's raised. It's about a son stepping into his own calling while still wanting to honor the parent. And that's really our invitation today It's to let go without abandoning them. It is to love without smothering them. It is to respect our parents without depending on them. And when we do this well, we create something as miraculous as that finest of wine at the wedding of Cana. We create a relationship that grows deeper and richer with time. That's my hope for you.